Hello, I'm Patrick Kalani with Audinate. In this video, we'll talk about installing Dante Domain Manager. First, we'll prepare for installation. Since we know some people will be setting this up with little to no experience with network servers, we'll begin with a brief tutorial on things like bare metal, hypervisors, and virtual machines. Now, from there, we'll talk about system requirements, and we'll offer some thoughts on computer hardware. The second phase is to go through a bare metal installation for beginning to end. We'll show the basic connectivity screens on the server itself, as well as the operational screens accessed through a web browser. We'll get the server licensed and recognizing Dante devices. Finally, we'll point out the core maintenance steps. We'll show how to update the server, back it up, restore it, and deauthorize it. Put it all together, and you'll be up and running with a basic Dante Domain Manager server in no time. So let's get started. When you install, one of the first questions is whether you want to do a bare metal installation or use a hypervisor. We'll start by explaining bare metal, and let's approach this by thinking about the structure of a personal computer. We start with some hardware and the associated BIOS. The BIOS is the lowest level of firmware that presents the hardware in a recognizable way to the operating system. The operating system offers a library of resources to the applications. The operating system will handle drawing windows, working with certain file types, navigating internal and external drives, that sort of thing. And of course, modern operating systems can support multiple applications running at the same time. This is essentially a bare metal installation of an operating system. The operating system is sitting directly on the bare metal of a machine. If we're dedicating a computer to run Dante Domain Manager, a bare metal installation is really the easiest way to manage this. And since Dante Domain Manager is a permanent asset on the network, this really reduces the temptation to tinker with the machine. Dante Domain Manager is downloaded as an ISO image that will load the operating system and Dante Domain Manager application on your target machine all at once. In this video, this is the installation we'll walk through. An alternative to the bare metal installation is the use of a hypervisor. To explain this, let's go back to the personal computer idea. When Apple moved the Macintosh platform from the Motorola PowerPC to an Intel chipset, that represented an opportunity. Mac users could now use the same hardware to run Mac OS or Windows. Apple even offered a tool called Boot Camp, allowing you to boot into one OS or the other. The only problem was you could only run one at a time. A more flexible option used by many today is a Type 2 hypervisor. VMware Fusion or Parallels Desktop are popular options. So these are software applications that create a virtual machine. Basically, they simulate the hardware and the BIOS. From there, you can install an operating system on the virtual machine. Now, to be clear, you're not running Windows and Mac OS right next to each other, right? There's a structure here. When we have a hypervisor running as an application on an operating system, we call that a Type 2 hypervisor. Now, if we wanted to, we could put something else in that virtual machine, like Dante Domain Manager. Now, I would discourage you from running Dante Domain Manager on a machine that you're going to use as a desktop or a laptop. Dante Domain Manager needs to be a permanent asset on the network, and you don't want it to disappear every time your computer hangs up or performs a routine system update. A better way to manage this is to eliminate the complexity and weight of the underlying operating system. And that brings us to a Type 1 hypervisor. In this case, the hypervisor sits directly on the hardware. Now, of course, both Type 1 and Type 2 hypervisors can host multiple virtual machines, all managed from a single interface. So one thing that's really nice about this arrangement is that if you have to update one of these services, the hypervisor can restart only that virtual machine. You don't have to take down the other services at the same time. That's a nice feature. Okay, so that offers a bit of explanation on bare metal installation versus hypervisors. A bare metal installation really means you are dedicating the computer to running Dante Domain Manager. It's the flattest, easiest installation you can do. A hypervisor is a service that allows you to put multiple applications on the same server hardware. And as a nice feature there, we can restart the virtual machines independently. Now, of course, we recommend reading the Dante Domain Manager instructions. but this video should offer a pretty good push start on the bare metal installation. If you're going to go the hypervisor route, this video will offer some of the instructions, but we do have additional guides that will explain VMware ESXi, VirtualBox, and Microsoft Hyper-V. Okay, so next let's talk about choosing hardware. Realistically, with modern computer hardware, you're probably going to have a hard time not meeting these system requirements, right? But keep in mind that these are just minimums. If you're going to have a very large Dante network, or if you're going to use more advanced features in there, you probably want to dedicate more resources to the server. And this brought up an interesting discussion in preparation for this video. What type of hardware do we recommend? Well, I think we concluded we can't just tell everybody, hey, go buy this particular machine, it'll be great. If we did that, we'd have to design a machine for the largest installations, and then the more simple installations would have a machine that's gross overkill. However, we did come up with some basic advice. The Intel NUC is a small form factor PC. You can build it yourself, and a modern Mac Mini would be another option in this category. Now, you may have seen us use these at demonstrations or at trade shows. Realistically, we chose them because we need something we can travel with, right? Something we can carry on the plane. Plus, if the hardware gets damaged while we're on the road, replacements can be found immediately at local electronics stores. And also, when we're doing these demonstrations, we're not usually separated from the computer hardware. So the fact that these will run quietly is a real benefit. These are all positives. I could see this type of hardware for a modest theater or a small church, especially if they're going to do a bare metal installation. If a technical director just wanted to keep everything in a familiar wheelhouse, especially if they're an all-Mac house, I totally get it. However, I think it's worth encouraging everyone, including audio professionals, to consider traditional server hardware. While the fans can be noisy, some might say that's the sweet sound of uptime. So, in your designs, the two things you'll want to consider are the depth of the chassis and the noise, right? But since Dante Domain Manager doesn't have to be in the rack with all of your other gear, it just needs to see it on the network, you can put the server back in an equipment room or something like that. But as we said, the benefit of a traditional server is uptime. It isn't just about having reliable components. These machines are often designed with redundant power supplies and drives and RAID arrays. So in the event of the most common hardware failures, this machine will probably just soldier on. It'll probably give you an alert to let you know that some redundant part needs to be replaced. And in some cases, those parts may be hot swappable, so you don't even have to turn the machine off. All of this points to more uptime, which is incredibly valuable, especially in installations where you're not running multiple machines in high availability mode. And of course, traditional servers offer massive scalability in RAM, hard disk space, and so on. This is especially great if you're looking to run other server applications on the same machine. So at Audinate, we don't really want to tell you what machine to buy, just like we don't want to tell you what network switches to buy. Now that you have a bit of information about the benefits of each platform, choose something that will fit your need. Okay, with the hardware requirements considered, let's get to installation. We'll walk through 4 basic steps. First, we'll show you how to take Dante Domain Manager ISO files and make a bootable drive from it. We'll show you how to do this on Windows and on Mac OS. Then we'll go through the process of a bare metal installation. It's pretty simple, but there are some tips that will be helpful. From there, we'll take a quick tour of the server's native menu so you know where to set the server's IP address, and we'll log in with a web browser to license the server. To make a bootable drive on a Windows machine, you'll want to use a program like Rufus. Now, Rufus is a free download. You can get it from rufus.ie. And once it's downloaded, you don't even have to install it on your machine. You just double-click it and it will launch. So here is my Dante Domain Manager ISO file on the desktop and my download of Rufus. I'll double-click to launch Rufus. Windows is asking me if I want to run this. I'll click yes. At the top, I choose my flash drive as the target. Here, I'll select the Dante Domain Manager ISO file as the source. The rest of the settings in the middle should update automatically. Now this is important. We don't want to write in ISO image mode. Choose to write in DD image mode, then click OK. We'll get one more warning that we're about to erase the thumb drive. Click OK to get past that. Now this process will probably run for a minute or so. I'll fast forward towards the end where the program will show it's 100% complete, but we don't get a close button. It says cancel. That means it's not done yet. It's still working. Wait for the program to finish, safely eject your thumb drive, and you're done. Now, for the Macintosh, it's going to work a little bit different. We're going to show you how to do this from the command line. And to do this, you're going to need administrator access to your machine. If you look in your Applications folder, you'll find another folder called Utilities. In there, launch Disk Utility. We'll choose our flash drive, select Erase, and choose to format it as MS-DOS FAT. Click Erase and wait for the process to finish. Next, go back in the Utilities folder and open Terminal. The first command you'll want to type is disutil list. This will get you a list of drives on your computer. Here we can see the flash drive is shown as disk 2. We can see it's an external drive and we see its size and its name. So as we go forward, we will be typing disk 2 to reference our flash drive. But obviously you will substitute your disk number when you're doing this on your machine. We'll need to unmount the flash drive to write the ISO image to it. To do that, type disutil space unmount disk space /dev/ and your disk number. And we see the drive disappear from the desktop. Now we need to copy the ISO image to that thumb drive. Type sudo space dd space if equals. Then drag the DDM ISO image to the terminal window to capture the path of the file. Then type of equals /dev/r and follow it with your flash drive disk number. Press Enter for that command. Then you'll be prompted to enter your computer's administrative access password. Do that and the process will begin. Now this can take a long time. It took about 10 minutes on our machine. And you won't get any feedback throughout the process. Don't assume your machine froze. Okay? If you want to get some feedback, you can press Control-T and it will start giving you updates as this goes through. When the system is done, a pop-up will appear saying, "The disk you inserted was not readable by this computer." That's what we want to see. Click Eject, pull the flash drive from the Mac, and you're done. So now that we have our installation thumb drive, we're ready to do a bare metal installation. Now, obviously, this is going to erase anything on your computer's internal hard drive. So if you have anything you want on there, now's the time to back it up. Once you've done that, insert your thumb drive into the machine and boot it up. If your machine isn't set to prioritize external boot drives, you may need to change that preference. On a Macintosh computer, press the Alt or Option key on your keyboard to access the boot drive menu. On a PC, you'll be looking at the startup screens for what key to press to access that menu. Once you've successfully booted from the flash drive, you'll be presented with the options of just jumping right into the installation or running some tests first. In this case, we'll just go ahead and run the installation. Now, if anybody runs into a problem at this point, it usually falls into one of two camps. If your computer's internal hard drive is in some esoteric format that our installer can't recognize, you may have to restart your machine with a disk utility, format the drive, and then come back to your flash drive. Everything will be fine. The other possibility is that you may not have set up your flash drive correctly. For instance, if you went into Rufus and forgot to tell it to write a DD image instead of an ISO image, that would also fail partway through. Other than that, should be smooth sailing. Now I'll fast forward a little bit. When it hits this point where it says running post-installation scripts, it will be here for a very long time. Just let it finish. As a matter of fact, it may be here so long that a screensaver kicks in. Now, how do you know when it finishes? Now, because certain keys on the keyboard will affect the installation process, I can tell you that if you just press the space bar, things will come back and you'll be able to move forward from there. At the end, the system will report installation complete. Press Return to Quit. Okay, so we'll do that and we'll restart the machine. Now, when you do this on your machine, it's a good time to remove the installation flash drive And if you have not set up your computer with internet access, now's the time to do it. Now that we have Dante Domain Manager installed, we'll see it go through these boot up screens. Now I'll fast forward through this so we can take a look at the server's built-in menu system. At the top of the menu, you'll see the IP address that the server has resolved to. Now by default, this will be set by DHCP. And we'll talk about this later in the video, but chances are you'll want to make this a static IP. To do that, go down to menu number 3. Once you have your machine addressed as you like, use that first menu item to make sure that this server can access the internet. We'll need internet access to license the server. Now if that checks out, we're done with the server itself. We can go to a laptop or a desktop, open a web browser, and finish the configuration from there. If you're on the same subnet as the server itself, you should be able to access it by going to ddm.local. Your computer should resolve this using MDNS. On this screen, we'll thoroughly read and accept the end-user license agreement. And if you have a TLS certificate for secure web connections, put it in here. Now, if you don't have a TLS certificate, or if it's going to come later, that's okay. We can skip this step for now. If you want to add one later, you can, and when we get to the server maintenance portion, we'll show you where that screen is. Here we choose the reason for the installation. Since we're setting this up for the first time, we'll choose Fresh Installation. Later in this video, we'll show restoring a server. Now, if you're going to be using high availability mode on Dante Domain Manager, your primary server is still set as a fresh installation, so you can still go down this path with us. But we will have a separate video where we'll talk about setting up your secondary and your arbiter machines. Okay? That'll be covered in a separate video. Next, select your role. If you're a contractor setting this up for somebody else, choose third party. If you're setting this up for yourself or for your organization, choose end customer. Now we create a password for the primary administrator of this server. That username will be admin, but the password can be whatever you make it here. At the bottom of this screen, you can generate a recovery code to recover the password of the administrator. Store it someplace safe. Maybe you'll store it with the Dante Domain Manager license and so on. With that saved, we go to the next step. We'll enter our Dante Domain Manager product key. And of course, for this to authorize, we'll need to have a valid internet connection. Now to be clear, we only need internet access for Dante Domain Manager to authorize, deauthorize, or update the machine. Once you've done that, you can take the machine offline, put it on a network that doesn't have internet connectivity, and things will be okay. If we want to choose a different domain name than the default, we can do that here. I'll leave it as ddm.local. Finally, we have to create the first domain for Dante Domain Manager to use. The server needs at least one domain. I'll name mine Auditorium. And voila! Our Dante Domain Manager server is all set up and ready to go. So we've checked off installation. Now let's quickly talk about enrolling Dante devices. If you saw the introduction video to Dante Domain Manager, right, the in-depth tour, you already know a bit about the unmanaged domain, moving devices between domains and things like that. So in this section, we're going to put a little bit of meat on that. If I look in the Devices tab of Dante Domain Manager, I can see my devices are showing up in the unmanaged group. Down below, I have the domains that I've made for this demonstration. But here I can see I have devices in the 192.168.1 subnet and another group down here in the 192.168.2 subnet. Now, depending on your network configuration, Dante Domain Manager may only be showing you devices in the same subnet as the server. It may not see the devices in another subnet. Let me explain. Here we have a VLAN with Dante Domain Manager and our Dante devices. Dante Domain Manager, just like Dante Controller, can use MDNS for discovery, but this will only discover devices within its own subnet. If we add another VLAN to the network, we'll need a router to get traffic from one subnet to the other. When Dante devices in this subnet try to use MDNS for discovery, it won't cross the router. The little m in MDNS stands for multicast, and multicast does not cross a router. To solve this problem, Dante Domain Manager can use DNS SD to recognize all of your devices across all of your subnets. But of course that requires a DNS server, which is a little bit more than we want to get into in this video. If you have a situation where you just need a few devices linked in, it can be very simple to just manually link them to Dante Domain Manager, and let's show you how to do that. What we do is we tell Dante Domain Manager what IP address the other devices are using. Dante Domain Manager will then establish a link using unicast, which can cross a router. The Dante device will then remember where to find Dante Domain Manager, and it will make the link back using unicast. And now they're working together. Now Dante devices are going to memorize the IP address of the Dante Domain Manager server. That's why earlier in the video we said it's a really good idea, if not a requirement, to set the server to a static IP address. Now, let's show you how to manually link things in. To manually discover devices, you can click on Enroll Devices at the bottom. At the top, you can choose the domain you want to move the devices into. Click on Enroll by IP address, and you can enter the IP addresses of your devices. If you have a few, just put one on each line. If you have a massive list, you can also import them from a CSV file here at the bottom. Now once Dante Domain Manager recognizes your devices, we can move them between domains in a number of ways. In the introductory video, we showed you drag and drop, which is certainly easy with a limited number of devices, but as your list of domains and devices gets longer, it becomes a bit unwieldy. It can be nice to have a more direct method. You can also select the devices in the list and click Enroll Devices in either pane. Again, we'll see the domains in a drop-down list. Click Enroll to make that happen. I'll do this once more for the devices in the auditorium, and I'm done. So at this point, we've got Dante Domain Manager installed, licensed, recognizing our Dante devices, and we've put them in the appropriate domains. Now, the one thing we haven't addressed yet is clocking. Setting up clocking is actually fairly easy, but you have to understand what you want to do before you do it. And for that amount of explanation, we felt that was best handled in another video. So look for the video on clocking. At this point, I think it's worth wrapping up this video with a few maintenance functions you'll want to use. When we originally set up the server, we said that you could add the TLS certificate later. That is available in Settings, Network and Security. You'll be able to add it here at any time. Another handy feature, if you remember when we were setting up the server, we were able to test to make sure the server was able to access the internet. That feature is available through the web browser as well. It's right in this same screen, Settings, Network and Security, and click Run Diagnostics. So this is a handy test to run anytime you want to authorize, deauthorize, or update your machine. Now, another helpful feature is the ability to back up your server. Now, one of the nice things, we don't have to back up the entire hard drive. We can save just the configuration of this Dante Domain Manager so it uses much less data. Conveniently, the server will tell you anytime the configuration is changed, so you can consider backing it up then. To download the server configuration, go to Settings, Updates and System Information, and download the system configuration to your machine. Now, when you download this, make sure your computer is saving it as a TGZ file or a tar.gz file. Effectively, this is a very particular type of zip file. And some web browsers, thinking they'll be helpful, automatically unzip the file for you. Now, that's not helpful for us, because if we're going to send this back to Domain Manager to restore the server at some point, it needs the zipped format. If somebody didn't realize that they downloaded it and their server unzipped it, you can just rezip it, but make sure you use that format, right? It's the gzip format, the GNU zip. Do that and you'll be fine. Now, the other thing that could happen is if you're restoring your machine because the hardware failed, you won't have the opportunity to deauthorize the machine, right? You can try going ahead and installing it. Sometimes the licensing server will automatically let you go through. If it doesn't, you can give us a call and we will reset that key for you. Okay, so let's walk through restoring a server. Effectively, you're going to start with a fresh installation. When you log in with the web browser, you'll do the same first few steps, accepting the user agreement and addressing the TLS certificate if necessary. When you get to the screen asking what type of installation you're doing, you'll see an option to restore a configuration. That's what we want. Drag your configuration in, and once the screen shows it's ready, upload it. Once that's done, we can log in and re-enter the product key to reauthorize the server. Of course, this step needs internet access to reach the license server. And once that's done, we're back in business. And finally, that brings us to deauthorizing the server. Now, why would we deauthorize the server? Well, let's suppose you're going through a planned hardware upgrade. You can deauthorize your old machine, recovering the key, and then reinstall it on a new machine. To deauthorize Dante Domain Manager, go to Settings, License Management. In here, you'll see the current license for Dante Domain Manager. Click to deactivate it. It'll take just a moment. So that about wraps up this video. We've explained the server structure, including terms like bare metal, hypervisor, and virtual machines. We've also had a short discussion about choosing the right hardware for your system. We completely walked through the bare metal installation. And remember, if you're going to use a hypervisor, we have guides to help you through several popular options. We licensed the server, recognized our Dante devices, put them into domains, and we walked through some of the basic maintenance processes related to the server. At this point, you are ready to set up your Dante Domain Manager server. Thank you for joining us, and we'll talk soon.